Hello everyone, my name is Sky Wiggett. The topic I have chosen to do my persuasive speech on is the death penalty. The death penalty is a serious, hot topic amongst today's politicians. Statistics show that 1,188 people are executed in the U.S. from 1977 through 2009, primarily by the means of lethal injection. There are several other types of capital punishment, but they are not commonly used. The breakdown of who supports and who doesn't support the death penalty usually goes like this. The Republicans or the conservatives usually support the death penalty, while the Democrats or the liberals do not support the death penalty. With this topic comes many questions, the most important one being, should the death penalty be allowed in all states? What are the different forms of execution permitted in the United States? And the last question I have is, what are the crimes considered horrible enough for capital punishment? The death penalty is an important topic that all Americans need to inform themselves on. There is a lot of history of the death penalty in the United States. Throughout American history, capital punishment was widely accepted and widely practiced. Up until the 20th century, most executions were held public. However, coinciding with judicial executions, there was also a history of extrajudicial killings and mob violence, and a disproportionate number of lynching victims were African Americans. Atrocities such as these tarnished the reputation of capital punishment in the United States. Currently, several national and international organizations, including Amnesty International, Truth and Justice, and the Roman Catholic Church, have declared themselves in outright opposition to the death penalty in America. Through legal challenges and political lobbying, these groups insist on the philosophy that taking the human life is immoral and regardless of the circumstances. So the first question I present to you is, should the death penalty be allowed? This question is very important. George W. Bush stated this exact quote, which I strongly agree with. I'm going to uphold the law of the land and let the political consequences be what they may. If it costs me politically, it costs me politically. No case is an easy case. I also keep in mind the victims, and the reason I support the death penalty is because it saves lives. That's why I support it, and the people of my state support it too. This quote shows how many of the supporters of the death penalty feel. Some criminologists do not believe the death penalty acts as a deterrent to homicide. Statistics state that states with the death penalty face more murders per year than non-death penalty states. This is because the states with the death penalty need it, because there are more homicidal infractions being committed every year compared to other safer states. The next question I present to you is, how do they execute these punishments? Lethal injection is the most widely used. The way lethal injection works is they first give you a dose of the drug sodium thiopental, which is a fast-acting sedative that induces a deep coma-like unconsciousness when it's given in the amounts used for lethal injection. The second drug, pancorium bromide, which is a paralytical agent that inhibits all muscular skeletal movements, and by paralyzing the diaphragm, it stops the respiration. Potassium chloride, which is the third drug, interferes with the electrical signals that stimulate the contractions of the heart, inducing cardiac arrest. The proper administration of the first drug ensures that the prisoner does not experience any pain associated with paralysis and cardiac arrest caused by the second and third drugs. I personally believe that murderers should be killed the same way that they murdered their victims, an eye for an eye. Along with the lethal injection, there are 4 other possible execution styles, which include electrocution, gas chamber, hanging, and lastly, firing squad. However, these have only been used a handful of times over the past 40 years. The last question I present to you is, what crimes are punishable enough for capital punishment? There are only a handful of crimes that are considered capital crimes. Obviously, not every crime out there qualifies you for capital punishment. If you get a speeding ticket, a littering ticket, or perhaps a shoplifting charge, underage drinking charge, you are not going to be considered for capital punishment. It's just that easy. Murder is the number one capital crime, as it should be. Then, depending on the state and their laws, different crimes can qualify you in one state that doesn't in the other. Just to name a few of these crimes, treason, aircraft hijacking, and drug trafficking are all crimes that could sentence you to capital punishment, depending on the state and their laws. My question for you, the listener, is do you think that revenge is inherently immoral? Let's not forget that murder is a horrifying, vicious crime. The reality is that there are few innocent people on death row today. The majority of these inmates did, in fact, commit the crimes for which they were found guilty. These killers brutally took the lives of innocent victims by not recognizing the lives of their victims as sacred. They cannot claim their own lives as sacred. In the end, the death penalty is an individual punishment for individual crime. The death penalty should be legal in all 50 states. These murderers, rapists, homegrown terrorists do not deserve life after the crimes they commit. Why do they get to live and breathe while their victims and their victims' family have to suffer for the rest of their lives? Lethal injection is the easy and most peaceful way for these horrible people to die. Capital punishment and crime should be talked about more to hopefully deter others from committing similar crimes. If the criminals can commit the crime with no problem, then they are fully aware of the consequences that follow. Thanks everyone for listening, and have a great night.